Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a look at Matthew Wolff's incredibly unique golf swing. Welcome to my channel, guys. If you're new here, we talk about some of the best golf swings in the world. Tiger Woods, Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau. We break them down for you, help you understand them, help you understand why people do things a little bit differently, how it works for them, how it matches up, and what you guys can take away from it and apply to your game as well. So let's dive straight in, take a look at Matthew Wolff. Matthew Wolff, incredibly unique golfer, incredibly unique swing. We have a few different swings for you guys. We're going to start off with a little wedge shot, then we've got iron, wood, and driver as well. Here we've got Matt set up just with a little wedge. Looks like he's trying to hit maybe 70, 75, maybe 80 yard shot. So setup wise, obviously Matt is coached by George Gankis. George Gankis likes his players to get kind of quite rounded at setup. He feels that it helps them then get into better posture when they're actually swinging it. So it's a very relaxed setup position. There's a lot of rounding of the kind of upper back. Shoulders aren't exactly in great posture, which is kind of something to bear in mind, but obviously it works for him. So as he takes the club away, obviously he has this very wide takeaway, which I love. I absolutely love that. Keeps the club very far away from the body. Obviously that club head here parallel to the ground gets super away from him and outside the hands. But what's really important to mention is the connection with the arms and the hands in this position. Even though the club head is away from him and outside the hands, the arms and hands are still very much connected to the body, very much has that kind of triangle between his arms and his chest and shoulders, and really good swing. So as we take it to the top, that club's just going to work straight up, but he does keep that connection with the arms, hands to the body. Huge hip turn, huge shoulder turn. If we look how steep his shoulder plane is, this is something I really like to see. His shoulders are almost pointing down at the golf ball, which is something so many people get wrong. They have very flat shoulders and they kind of turn instead of, this is a pivot motion. So he's really using the ground here. He's really using his body, utilizing his kind of turn, his pivot, his lower body as well. And also something I like to see, his arms and hands are actually below his shoulder plane as well. A really good indication that he's got great connection to his body, and his body is actually the engine for the swing. So as we start to take it through transition, now he starts to shallow it out a bit. We can see that shaft kind of flattening out just a little bit. It's not flat, but he had it super upright in the backswing and very much across the line, obviously. So we get into this position here. Look at that connection with the right elbow and the body, absolutely awesome. And from this position, watch his head. Watch where he's looking. As he comes through, he actually starts looking ahead of the ball. He's trying to look at that stick that's directly in front of him. And if we pause it at impact here, his eye line is nowhere near the ball. His shoulders are open, his hips are open, chest is all open, and he's actually looking in front of him. Now this is something we've seen from some of the other best players in the world, like Dustin Johnson. He's obviously improved his wedge game so much in the last few years, and it's something that really helps a lot of these guys with their wedges, with their golf swing, get a bit more turn, get a bit more open through impact. So as we take it through, obviously he still has that connection with the right elbow. Then he's going to release the club head down, and just works through to a beautiful balanced finish. Now here we have Matt with an iron. This looks to be about a 7 iron, I would think. And again, set up really nice and relaxed. One thing I personally don't like to see, and I wouldn't recommend you try, is his hands and arms are super close to his body. Now this works for him because he gets a huge amount of lower body rotation, and through impact he doesn't early extend, but I definitely wouldn't recommend this for myself or for most golfers because we don't have the athleticism to keep the space away from the ball. I'll kind of explain that as we go through this swing. But yeah, his hands are super close into his body. There's almost no gap between his body and hands. Also, rounded shoulders again, not maybe quite as rounded because he's not quite as over the golf ball. As we start to take the club away, well, first of all, he's going to do his patented kind of pre-shot little trigger movement. And this is a drill George Gankas gave him to help him kind of exaggerate his impact position, get the feel of where he wants to be at impact, hips open, shoulders open, etc. So now he's going to look back at the ball and he's going to start his swing. Now we're going to notice a lot of similarities if we pause it here parallel to the ground. He's turning his lower body a huge amount. He's keeping good connection with his hands, arms and his body. He's pivoting really well. Those shoulders are tilted super down at the ball. And obviously that club head is so far outside the hands. Now we're going to see that working up. And if we pause it in this position, look at how the club shaft is actually parallel with his spine angle, which is a really interesting thing and something David Ledbetter does talk about actually in his kind of A-swing technique. And yeah, kind of interesting to see that influence. By the way, guys, at the end of this episode, I will be playing through all of these swings. So if you want to check them out, you can save them to your phone, screen record them, do whatever you want. And I'll be playing them through all at the end. And obviously, if you are enjoying this video, do give it a like and do subscribe to my channel. Now, as he takes it to the top, obviously he's so far across the line. He actually doesn't have much wrist set at the top of his swing. Pretty kind of wide, big turn with the shoulders, turn with the hips. But I mean, that club is nowhere near parallel to the ground. He doesn't get to parallel to the ground with any golf club. And this is a full swing. We can see that from the shoulder turn, the hip turn. It's a full golf swing. His arms are deep. They're in, you know, a full length position. He just doesn't have much wrist set. He also does have a very weak grip, Matt Wolff. So that is something to bear in mind as we start the downswing. But if we look at how much lower body turn, his right leg is almost straight. His left leg has a huge amount of knee bend. His spine angle's great. His, you know, he's pivoted well. Look at that kind of shoulder plane pointed really steeply down nicely at the ball. Really like to see that. Now, this is where it gets pretty awesome. Club starts to shallow out in transition. Look at that right elbow working beautifully down, shallowing that club out as he starts to rotate. Matt Wolff has so much rotation in his golf swing, it's just ridiculous. Club still shallowing out, he's turning, and he's actually at this position got so much forward flexion. And if you remember, we talked about him standing very close to the ball. This is where he creates space for him to actually swing the golf club. But for most of us, this wouldn't work because we don't have that athleticism, the mobility in our hips and our back, and, you know, the flexibility of our muscles, basically. I know for me, I probably break myself in half trying to get into these positions that he gets himself into. And love to see that connection with the right elbow and the body. Pulls it here, and yeah, club's perfectly parallel to the ground, perfectly in line with his hands. Huge turn with the lower body already. His lower body is open, and from this position he's not going to turn too much more with the lower body. He's going to now let the upper body, the hands and arms, all release down onto the golf ball. Pulls it at impact, super open with the hips, shoulders, chest. He hasn't early extended. If we look at that spine angle, he is super over the ball too. He is covering the ball, as kind of a lot of pros like to describe it as. And now this is where hands and arms release. No more shoulder turn or hip turn. Now he just turns through to a beautifully balanced and pretty iconic finish position. Okay, so here we are with Matt. It looks like he's maybe hitting a hybrid. I think those kind of TaylorMade Sim Max rescue hybrids have been super popular on tour, which is kind of funny as most tour players typically don't use hybrids. So setup, weirdly, he actually looks like he's in a bit better posture here than when he was hitting the iron and the wedge. Kind of a bit more upright, obviously, because of the angles. Still, those arms are very, very close to him, but he does look nice and relaxed. Everything's in perfect alignment. Feet, shoulders, hips, knees, perfectly aligned. Really like that. Even forearms, really nice. As he starts to start his golf swing, again, we're going to see club way outside the hands. I mean, that is definitely more than the wedge or the iron. That is so far. I mean, if we look, that's outside the line of the golf ball. But if we do look at those hands and arms, they are connected to the body again. One thing I love about Matthew Wolff swing, which you definitely 100% can take away from it, is how he pivots, how he uses the ground effectively with his lower body. And this is how he creates so much power, and he's one of the longest guys out on tour. And he's not one of the biggest guys. Yes, he's athletic, he's probably pretty strong, but he's not ripped. He's no Bryson DeChambeau. He's not Tony Finau. He's not super tall. So he has to create that power somehow, and he does that by utilizing his body and using the ground really effectively. Matt did used to be a professional, not a professional, but he used to be a very good baseball player too. So you can see a lot of influences in his golf swing from that. Again, as we take it to this position, that is perfectly level with his spine, which is really, really interesting for me. Takes it to the top. I love to see that top position with the space he's created with that right arm. It's quite straight. It's not super bent, not super deep. It's actually pretty wide. And again, look how far away that club head is from parallel to the ground, that shaft. That is like, if you think about John Ram, kind of similar in some ways. John Ram gets the club way laid off. Matt Wolff, obviously not laid off. He's very across the line. But similar in that they both don't get very near parallel to the ground. Obviously, in this position, if we look at that left heel, that is so far off the ground, which is, something a lot of players are doing now to create more power, more speed. They stamp that heel down in transition, get that weight across to their left side. As Matt starts to swing down, I love his transition. The club shallows probably better than anyone in the game. Rotates now, that left heel stamped down. Look at those hips clearing. At this point in his swing, we can see that club face is still pointing up towards the sky. I did mention he has a very weak grip, but here, if we watch his left wrist, this is where he starts to close the club face. That left wrist starts to bow, and now if we look at the club face here, it's in a much better position, maybe still a little bit open, but he continues to bow that club face as he comes through, and, beautiful impact position. You can see that drill he does in his kind of trigger movement has really helped him create an amazing impact position, but it is super, super athletic. I don't want to stress how hard it is to try and get your body in that position. It's not just a case of making the movement and practicing it. It's a case of being very athletic, doing a lot of work in the gym. And I'm not talking about lifting weights. I mean flexibility, mobility, and speed training as well. As he swings through, arms and hands release, comes through to that beautiful balanced finish. Let's take one more look at that and just play it through from the top. So, takes the club way outside, left heel up, now stamps down, rotates, shallows, lets everything release, and, pretty effective. Now it's time for the driver. What you guys have all been waiting for. Let's get into it. So obviously, trigger movement starts, takes the club away, again, hugely outside the hands. We're going to see a lot of the same movements, but there are a few different things. He gets a bit more wrist set now. That club is definitely a little bit deeper, a little bit more across the line, a little bit more wrist set. That left heel is so far off the ground. I mean, it's not just the heel that's off the ground. He is barely touching his left toes to the ground. But huge turn with the body, huge turn with the shoulders, hips, everything. Now he's going to stamp that down hard, rotate hard, shallows that club out perfectly. Look how deep the hands and arms are, so connected to the body. That right elbow is now very bent basically and connected to the body, stays tight to the body all the way through. Now with the driver, one thing I do love is how shallow he gets and how low the club head actually gets coming into impact. Watch this, look at this. The club head gets so low to the ground here. Look how low that is. And then as he comes through impact, it's just like, look at that there. He's probably a foot and a half away from the ball and the club's nearly touching the ground, which means he's going to be hitting up on the golf ball and is something loads of the best drivers of the golf ball in the world do. Rory springs to mind. He does this really well. They both, hit up on the ball a lot, and they're both some of the longest pound for pound hitters in the world. So as he starts to turn through, that body will stop rotating because he needs to allow the hands and arms to catch up. And look here at this kind of impact position. I mean, he's still not even in impact, and look, that club is just skimming the grass. It is beautiful to watch. Love that. So the hands and arms are going to really release hard now. And he stays in his posture after the golf swing, has a lot of left bend, but really releases the hands and arms hard, coming through to that beautiful balanced finish. Let's play it through one more time in kind of real-time slow motion. It's a interesting swing. It works for him. It has a lot of unusual movement, but if you see the positions he gets himself into at impact, it just works. They're good positions, aren't they? So what can we take away from this golf swing? What should you be thinking about maybe incorporating into your swing, and what shouldn't you? Well, it's important to note that Matt wasn't taught this method of swinging. This is his natural way of swinging the golf club, which he has refined by working with George Gankas, and is proving pretty successful. Does that mean we should all go and copy it? No. Each of us have different body shapes, different mobility, different levels of athleticism, and just naturally different golf swings. But there are some things we can learn from it, some things we can take away. I would say the biggest things is how he uses the ground and how he uses his body. Now, there are some really great drills for using the ground, and I'm actually going to make another video on this to help you guys use the ground more effectively, create that power in the golf swing. So if you guys do want to see that video, make sure you do give this one a like and subscribe to my channel. It will be coming soon. And so yeah, using the ground, definitely take that. Another thing is how his body pivots. That shoulder plane, I think, is really important. Far too many people get too upright, too flat, and it becomes more of a turn. And if you're turning, you're not going to be able to maintain your spine angle, not going to be able to maintain your posture, not going to be creating as much power as you definitely could be, and probably not as sustainable a movement as well in terms of putting stress through your body. So that's the things I would say we could definitely look at it. In terms of the unique things he does, he has that weak grip that he matches up with that bowing of the left wrist kind of through impact to help square it up. He, has that hugely wide away from him kind of club outside the hands takeaway, but then he shallows it out beautifully and it works well. He has so much rotation, but that matches up because from impact and even before impact, really, he kind of stops rotating and allows the hands and arms to catch up, which is something I think is misconstrued about rotation, the golf swing. You think just rotate hard, just rotate the whole way. But at a certain point, that would just lead to you getting stuck behind the club and hands way too deep, which is something I've definitely struggled with. And so you've got to, at some point, stop the rotation of the body, let the hands and arms get back out in front, and that's how you create that whipping motion and get all that speed through your golf swing. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. There's so much to talk about with Matt's swing. I mean, we've really just scratched the surface. We could go into way more depth, but I think this is a good, pretty basic kind of analysis of some of the key factors in his golf swing, and to break it down for you guys to help you understand what you maybe should or shouldn't be doing. But what you definitely should be doing is videoing your golf swing, guys. You've got to video your swing, because you have to understand what you're actually doing at the moment and what you need to work on and change. It doesn't matter if you're having golf lessons, working with a coach. You have to take ownership of your own golf swing. You have to video it. You have to understand it. Alright guys, that wraps things up for today. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Remember guys, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, comment your thoughts below. I'd love to know what you guys think. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Grip it and rip it.